Welcome to the Mindful Fire podcast. If you're enjoying the show, please leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcast. My dad will be so grateful. See you next time on the Mindful Fire podcast.
Welcome to the Mindful Fire podcast, a show about crafting a life you love and making work optional, using the tools of mindfulness, envisioning, and financial independence. I'm your host, Adam Coelho, and I'm so glad you're here. Each episode of the Mindful Fire podcast explores these 3 tools through teachings, guided meditations, and inspiring interviews with people actually living them to craft a life they love. At its core, Mindful Fire is about creating more awareness and choice in your life. Mindfulness helps you develop self-awareness to know yourself better and what's most important to you by practicing a kind, curious awareness. Envisioning is all about choosing to think big about your life and putting the power of your predicting brain to work to create the life you dream of. And financial independence brings awareness and choice to your financial life, empowering you to make your vision a reality by getting your money sorted out and ultimately making work optional. And here's the best part. You don't have to wait until you reach financial independence to live out your vision. Mindful Fire is about using these tools to craft that life now on the path to financial independence and beyond. If you're ready to start your Mindful Fire journey, go to mindfulfire.org/start and download my free envisioning guide. In just 10 minutes, this guide will help you craft a clear and inspiring vision for your life. Again, you can download it for free at mindfulfire.org/start. Let's jump into today's episode. Katrina, welcome to the Mindful Fire podcast. I'm so glad to have you here.
Thanks, Adam. I am so excited to be here. I've been waiting for this.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this quite a bit. We had a conversation about a month ago now, and I loved every second of that. I got so many ideas and was so inspired. Even reflecting on my own sabbatical in that conversation was super powerful. So I'm excited to bring this conversation of taking career breaks and sabbaticals to all of the listeners. So before we get into the details there, I'd love to have you share a little bit about who you are, your journey, and what you're up to in the world.
Yeah, I feel like a person that many of your listeners can relate to, high achiever, high performer. So for myself, that meant climbing the corporate ladder. I was a math major, became an actuary in the healthcare industry, did that for 8 years, realized that wasn't what I wanted to do, decided to responsibly quit my job in life, go to get my MBA, right? Go hide away in business school and change my career because that would fix everything. Except it didn't. I got a great job coming out of my business school and I started my second career, market research. But very quickly in that second career, I had to face a really hard truth, which was I was exhausted. I was stuck on a hamster wheel that just kept spinning. And when I looked at my life, there was no part of it that looked the way that I had always imagined and dreamed my life would look. It didn't have a sense of freedom. It didn't have this sense of fulfillment. And I really genuinely felt trapped by my success. And so that is I became the person that I needed back then, which is a person that helps people find that freedom, find that fulfillment, and really let go of old thinking that keeps you trapped in golden handcuffs. And I took a career break. That was the pivotal moment that sort of broke me free. I saved $40,000 in 18 months. I only had $1,500 in my bank account when I got this crazy idea to travel around the world. But I made it happen. And then I gave 8 months notice at my job, left, traveled the world for 20 months until I ran out of money, came back, asked myself some really hard questions about what I wanted for the next chapter of my life and realized being debt-free was the next level for me in financial freedom. So I paid off all of my student loan debt from business school in less than 2 years. And I got certified as a life coach once I achieved that milestone. And I have been helping people take career breaks and sabbaticals ever since. So it's been 7 years now. I've supported almost 100 career breaks and written a book with the For Dummies publisher that is what I do. I am here to help people live a vibrant version of life that feels really fulfilling and is so much more of what they really want to experience.
Wow. That is awesome. Yeah. I mean, it's so cool to hear the self-awareness that you had to realize, like, I've been on this hamster wheel. I've been pursuing success, what I was told was success, and I've gotten a lot of it, and I'm tired, burnt out, and not happy. And then you had also, so you had that awareness, right? A lot of people just keep charging forward, and a lot of us do. And I guess at some point you reach a breaking point where you realize, like, this isn't it, right? But you then
Yeah.
had the courage to move forward and actually do something about it. Where do you think that courage came from?
I think there were decisions I made in my very younger years in my youth that sort of built this confidence and this fundamental sense of when I follow my true heart, right? Like things will always work out. They might not be easy. They might not work out smoothly. They might not even work out immediately, but I will always get to the place
Mm.
I've been meant to go. And I think that has happened and played out in small ways and then bigger ways. And one of the biggest ways for me was when I was graduating from undergrad. I was at Smith College. I took on a lot of debt to go there. It was a really good school. The job market was abysmal. It was 2001. And I turned down a very good job because it was in Connecticut and I really was tired of living in New England and I really wanted to go live in Atlanta. I had no idea how I was going to get down there. LinkedIn wasn't a thing. Online recruiting was barely a thing at that time. But I was just like, I can't settle. I won't settle. And I remember my parents took on half of my student loan debt with me. So we took on, like we kind of split it 50-50. And I remember feeling like this sense of obligation, like I owe it to them to take this job because I have to start paying back my debt. And this is what we've all sacrificed for. And I felt a lot of responsibility for that. But at the end of the day, there was a part of me that just couldn't go against my integrity. And I think if you make that decision to go against it over and over again, it becomes a little bit easier each time. But if you hold fast to it, right, and you strengthen that, instead, the opposite is true, where it becomes a little bit easier to follow your integrity and to believe that somehow it will work out. So I ended up turning down this job with no offer. And then a few weeks later, I got an interview for a job in Atlanta doing almost the exact same thing. I ended up getting like the offer after the interview, and it was so amazing because it paid more money. They let me start in the fall instead of having to work right away in the summer. I got a $5,000 relocation bonus, and it was just like a better offer all the way around. And that was a very solidifying moment for me to say, like, wow, even if you don't see the place that you're jumping to, right? You're at that chasm and you're like, oh, I don't know exactly I'm going to get across. Just having faith, taking that like flying leap, you will get over there, right? Just have your parachute, but like get over there. And I was just like, man, okay, there's something to this. So I think there have been times where I've pushed that down and I have denied it because I'm not the bravest person that ever walked the face of the earth. I'm still a human. But I do feel like at some point I reached this breaking point and this tension point where I know the decision I'm about to make is going to be a very pivotal decision. And it's really hard for me to go against what my spirit is saying, like, girl, you need this, And that was what was true for me in regards to my break as well.
I love it. I'm so glad I asked, because it's like you said, like whatever we practice, we get better at. If we practice not listening to what we need, not trusting our integrity, then that gets easier and easier. But so does the flip side, where we listen to what we want, what we need, and actually act on that. That becomes easier as well. Yeah, just it's as you're talking, like what we were just talking about before are some of my recent career challenges, we'll say. I was in a difficult situation at work where I came back from mental health leave, and I was surprised with a performance plan that I don't believe that I deserve, and have evidence that I did not actually deserve this performance plan. But I was faced with this situation where I was being told, you have 3 days to decide if you want to take severance or commit to immediate and sustained performance improvement, which they were very much positioning as like the way I described it, which is a little bit much, but it's like I described it to them as, so you're saying I'm standing on the gallows with the noose around my neck, and if I make one wrong step, I'm done. And they're like, yeah, basically. I was like, okay. But this is all to say that this experience over the last couple weeks, where I was very much fighting for my survival at this company that I dedicated my whole career to, the resilience and strength of character that I showed and just the clarity that I was able to move forward with, I impressed myself. I was so proud of myself because I was not afraid, right? They're coming at me. They're saying these things. And I was like, you know what? I know what I want, right? And it's a clarity of vision, right? You were describing you wanted to be in Atlanta. You wanted to get out of the Northeast. So you didn't take that opportunity. And then a better thing came along. And for me, it was like, I was sitting there with my email written, like, I'll take the severance, like, just in case I wanted, I was like right up to the buzzer. And I was like, you know what? I'm not done here. I'm not going out like that. There are things that I still want to do. This is a place that I've added a ton of value to, and I'm not going out like this. And I was able to have that clarity and say, my vision is this. It may not work out. I may get fired in a week, but I'm still going to go and I'm going to stand for what I believe in, and I'm going to defend myself. I'm not going to run away in the night and just let this happen to me. So
good for you. I mean, that's not an easy thing to do. I was just going to say, just as an add-on, one thing that I wanted to, contribute to the idea that you mentioned, just a few minutes ago. I feel like something I see with a lot of my clients is doubling down on goals that already don't work in regards to bringing happiness and fulfillment. And that's just such an interesting trap I think our brains go to. Think about jobs as an example. It's like, when I got this promotion or I went to this company and got that dream job or that job I was looking forward to, 6 months later, a year later, I'm still feeling really miserable. Maybe what I need is a different job. And it's like we just keep doubling down on the same path instead of having the self-awareness to say, you know what, every time I chase goals on this, I get that quick hit of accomplishment. I get that quick hit of achievement and pride and maybe that compensation. But ultimately, my happiness is just declining in a steady, maybe actually instead of continuing down this path, it's time to revisit and to reflect on, is there a different path that I want to be on? Maybe it's adjacent. Maybe it's not that different than the one I'm on, but is there some pit that I'm wanting to make, lifestyle, career choice, whatever it is, that is going to help me get closer to myself, get closer to that sense of fulfillment, get closer to that happiness?
it's a really interesting point because I often talk about this when I'm coaching people on envisioning. It's like, it's really hard for people to think outside of their current reality. So they have all these constraints and limitations and realities of their current life, and it's hard to think beyond that. And so I think that's why we just keep pursuing the same thing in a slightly different way. So, this promotion didn't do it. Let me get the next promotion, or let me get a different job, instead of kind of looking inward and saying, what do I really want? And what is about this is resonating with me, and what is causing me to suffer? And maybe there's a different choice I can make here. But yeah, I've done it many times. Maybe I'm doing it right now.
That's a human brain trap, I think.
I've had days in the last couple of weeks where I'm like, why didn't I take that money? I'm working so hard to just get back to the same money I could have taken without doing any of this work.
Yeah.
At the same time, it's like, no, it's because I'm still moving towards this vision and I'm not done with this. And I'm just standing up for my integrity. Like, I'm not just going to sign some paperwork and give away all my rights when I've been mistreated. No, I'm going to stand for what I believe in. I'm going to be a presence. I'm going to show them that I can do this like I was doing it. I'm going to go out on my own terms. I'm going to create my own off ramp like I've been cultivating for the last 14 years. Like, I'm not going out like that.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I don't want you to go out like that. I think, to have a silly analogy, it's like, people are like, ice cream is the best dessert ever. Have you had this ice cream? It's amazing. Ice cream is like my favorite, right? And so you're told collectively, society, like, ice cream is the thing, but you have a lactose intolerance. And so, you start out with like Breyer's vanilla and you're like, that didn't feel so good. And they're like, no, but like, it's not organic. And so like you go buy the organic ice cream and you eat it and you're like, I still feel sick. And somebody's like, have you had hot fudge on this ice cream? Like, and it's like, you just keep, when really what you need to do is say, oh my gosh, I have to be honest. I don't like ice cream. I have a lactose intolerance, right? And I think that is a mirror of what happens in our careers. And sometimes even, in finding the right relationship, it's like we just keep thinking it should look a certain way because somebody said, or TV or media like painted it that way, when really that's not our way. That's not our blueprint. And so it doesn't matter how great the flavor, the brand of ice cream is. If ice cream isn't for us, it's not for us. Now, maybe dairy free, but like we have to be honest about the fact that this isn't working. And to your point, reflect on like what is working for me and what isn't, and what do I want to do with that information?
Yeah. And I imagine this comes up in a lot of your work with helping people take career breaks. I guess I'd love to hear a little bit about how you help people cultivate both the self-awareness of what they need and actually listen to what they need, and then give themselves the permission to actually take and give themselves what they need. Like, how does that all come about in your work with clients?
Yeah. At the beginning of the session or the package, whatever we're working together, I always start, no matter where they are on the journey, we start with developing a purpose statement and 3 to 4 themes that would be the pillars and focus areas of their break. It's really important for people to feel validated and supported whenever it comes to making this decision, because there are so many fears and so many sources outside of themselves that are telling them, you should just find another job, take a week off, take a vacation if you need it, but like get back to work. Who are you, lazy, irresponsible person? And so I have had clients who literally in that first session, it's largely on feeling like they have the ability to give themselves full permission to take a break. So they'll hire me wanting a break. And the question that they're asking is like, how would I even? But the real issue underneath the issue is, I just need to give myself permission. Can I be a responsible person? Can I still be a successful person? Can I still be a good person if I'm not working? If I take a break, is that the most selfish thing ever? I've had multiple clients who in that first session, when we do the pre-work together and we're going through it, I'll reflect back and they'll say with like this huge sigh, like a weight off their shoulders, thank you for reflecting that back to me in that way. It feels so good to realize I'm not alone and I'm not the only person that feels this way. So I think that's a lot of the work I do. I have very powerful reframes after nearly 100 career breaks that I've supported. I have a lot of contextual examples to help people feel validated. You got kids, you have a job. Are you single? Are you in your 50s? Are you in your 30s? Have you been like on the trajectory and you're about to get promoted? Like whatever your issue is, I promise you, I have a client who has faced something similar. So that permission, that validation. But then it really comes down to setting that blueprint, the break blueprint, right? Deciding what is the driving vision of my break? What is my purpose statement? What are my themes? Am I budgeting and setting aside time and money for reentry so that I can ask the questions and process the break once it's over so that I'm the strongest candidate for whatever I'm launching into after a break? You want to be proactive about these things. And sometimes this is something people overlook in the process because they're so focused on just getting started and like, how am I going to afford it? Being able to really frame a break as an investment when it comes to money versus an expense, and painting a picture of what is possible. I mean, these are all the foundational things. So as a life coach, I'll help people with wherever they feel stuck. But this foundational blueprint work is something I do with all of my clients because I find that it creates just enough structure to not hem them in and confine them, especially as they continue to grow and change throughout the break. But it helps them feel confident. It helps them have clarity. It helps them be able to articulate to other people, what is this break about? Why am I taking it? And what am I doing? Even if I don't have the specifics or particulars yet.
Yeah, that's an interesting point you mentioned at the end there. Like, how do I explain this to other people? I imagine that's a big piece of the work because, yeah, like it's kind of hard to be like, yeah, I'm taking off. Like I'm not working. I mean, I've done a few breaks and I kind of love it, but I could see why people would think that, like, especially in our culture where it's just like work, like everything is about work. So Katrina, let's take a step back. It sounds like you have a wonderful process for helping people get clear on what their purpose is for their break and what their themes might be and helping them set that foundation. But I want to step back to understand, like, why do people not take the breaks that they need, right? What are those things that are keeping them from taking the break even when they know they need it? For me personally, I think it was like 2 years plus between when I said I should take a break and when I actually did take a break. And so what's keeping people from doing what they need sooner?
There's a foundation. And then on top of that foundation there are three big fears I see repeated over and over and over again. I'm going to say they are the most popular fears people have about taking a break. So foundationally speaking, why don't people take a break, or why does it take them so long? I believe we have human brains that want to keep us safe. That's what they're primed for. They're primed for survival, not for happiness, which means we are always going to grab onto whatever is in front of us that we stand to lose if we make a change, right? Especially if that change creates uncertainty, if it feels counter-cultural or unconventional. Our brain is like, well, what do I have today that I'm going to lose? And it tries to like hold it like, Schmeagol in the ring or whatever. It's just like, I can't let it go. I can't let it go. And what is fascinating is that your brain will hyper-focus on this, but what it won't look at is what you're actually losing if you don't do this thing, if you don't create this change. On a foundational level, a lot of people aren't thinking about, what if I actually never did take a break? And then I'm burnt out. And then I'm snapping at my family. And then my partner feels like they have the most like reactive, depressed, and angry partner that they've had, or version of me they've ever had. What if my health, I've seen this happen, mental and physical. What if my health starts to take a nosedive and then I have to take a leave of absence, but it's not in the positive way, it's in the crisis management way, right? What if I really was meant to write this book? What if I really, I'm a person who dies never having seen the world because I just never made time for it, even though I had the money? Foundationally, people are not looking at the whole picture. Of course, yes, think about the risk if you do take a break, but your brain will automatically gravitate to that. You really want to zoom out and think about all the risk if you didn't take a break that you are basically facing if you decide to postpone or just altogether scrap that idea. Now, that's the foundation of why people don't. But like, what are the three big fears? One, money. I'm sure this one's a no-brainer, right? Being able to afford a break, but it's not even about having the actual cash in hand. In fact, most of my clients are actually very high achievers who have done well for themselves in their careers. Now, sometimes their cost of living has like scope creeped its way up with commensurate with their salary and their benefits compensation, but they make good money because they always show up. They're high performers. They've really like been smart about navigating their career. The affording part is also a mindset thing. It's not just about having that cash. It's also about viewing your break as an investment. We'll invest in buying a house, buying a car, in our education, on taking amazing vacations. But a lot of times we're not setting aside a significant chunk of money to actually just invest in happiness and celebration of life and in our own well-being. That can feel so foreign. And so I find that especially for people that are really good with managing their money and do smart money moves, sometimes that saving can almost become like an addiction where it's like, I just feel good. And I feel like this automatic sense of like, oh, safety and just confidence from the fact that I just keep saving. Saving is great, but you want to be using that money in a way that is fulfilling you in the present moment and building for your future. So that's the money piece. The career piece, of course, is, will I find another job when this is over? Will people judge me for having a break? Will anyone hire me? Will I be a pariah? And to that, I say a career break is actually an asset. It can help you actually stand out in a positive way to get a job if you know how to frame it and if you are clear on the benefits you receive from your break, which is part of the work I do with clients as well. But that could be a story that makes you shine bright. I landed 5 job offers in just 5 weeks, including a 30% raise and a promotion. Another job was a job. One was a career change, and one was like a part-time endeavor that I was really interested in, right? And then I forget what the 5th one was, but I landed all of these jobs in just 5 weeks because I had great experience. I had a great education. I had a great network. But I also was very clear on how my break was an asset, and I highlighted it in my cover letter and I referenced it on my resume. And this was back in 2013 when breaks were heavily, stigmatized, super unfamiliar, not even nearly as normal as they are today. And so you want to highlight it as an asset and know that it can actually improve your career trajectory. Your career, I've seen it happen for so many of my clients. One of my clients left to be he was in a senior leadership position at a top Fortune 100 and then left to be the CEO. And he will highlight the benefit of his break as creating a version of him that could step up as the CEO and had the energy and the mental fortitude and also clarity and just fresh perspective that he needed after grinding it out for so long as a senior leader in his previous company and previous job. So think of it as an asset. Lastly, there's perception. What are people going to think of me? It's so sad but very human, that sometimes we will not do something that we know we really want and need to do because we don't know how other people will receive it. And our brain creates worst case scenarios about basically being shunned from all of humanity forever and ever because we decide to follow our own blueprint for what we need, which is just crazy. And I don't think there's a single person alive that makes it to old age and looks back and says, so glad that one manager I had 3 jobs ago, Bill, I'm glad that Bill really approved of my life choices. I feel really complete in my 80th year, just looking back on my life and feeling good about the fact that Bill, who didn't even really know me, really approved of how I live. Like, it's insanity. We know what is best for us in a way that no one else can because it's literally our life. No one else is responsible for seeing the vision of what we're trying to create until we've created it other than us. But when you let your life be shaped, the path of your life be shaped by what other people think you should do, or even worse, what you think they think you should do, that is a recipe for disaster and unhappiness, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's clear that you've thought and practiced this quite a bit. Thank you for sharing that. And yeah, I think all 3 of those things come up. I think the one that I have thought about a lot is just will I be able to get a job? What about my resume gap? Like that seems like
Yeah,
something people always think about. But yeah, in our conversation we had a month ago or so, and here, like it's clear that the break is actually an asset that differentiates you. It shows that you're taking ownership of your life and doing what you need to do and exploring things that make you a better rounded human being.
absolutely. I mean, you think about, this factory with hamster wheels and a bunch of hamsters. And all the hamsters have been running for years and they have sprains and broken hamster legs and they're just like doing everything they can to keep going. And you got off the hamster wheel. You went to play in the grass. You ate some amazing food. You went to a hamster retreat, right? Like you did all the things you wanted to do. When you roll back in the factory and you're like, I'm ready to get on a wheel, you are not burnt out. You are excited again. You're actually ready to get back on the wheel. You have cured all the aches, sprains, pains and things going on. You've nourished yourself. You've got new ideas. You're feeling really innovative. You're feeling really inspired. That is an asset. Everyone in corporate life, the majority of us are burnt out, right? We're juggling too much,
Mhm.
doing too much. If you take a break, you are going to come back stronger. You are going to come back better. You're going to come back with new ideas. And you're also going to come back with hopefully more clarity on what you want. So when you show up to that opportunity, you are able to bring a part of yourself that you had not accessed in years.
Yeah. I think that is a huge benefit of taking a break is just allowing yourself the opportunity to ask yourself questions that you don't normally ask, to get to know yourself and what you care about and what you love and what brings you alive in a way that you just didn't have a chance to ask because you were so busy just doing constantly, right? A metaphor that I like about mindfulness is that our minds are like a snow globe that we're constantly shaking up and agitated, right? And you could apply this to our lives in general. Just like we're so busy, we're just so overstretched in all ways at work and otherwise with all of our responsibilities. And mindfulness is like setting the snow globe down on the table, allowing the snow to settle so that you can see more clearly what's inside. And it's coming clear to me that taking a break in your career is like setting your life down on the table, allowing the snow to settle and to
Yeah.
see more clearly who you are, what you care about, and what's most important to you. And then when you come back with that clarity and that understanding, you can choose an opportunity that's helping you move in the direction of your vision that hopefully you can spend some time on your break thinking about. And that's the work that I do with people is helping them think big about their life and what they actually want and not just that next promotion. But then, so when you have this clarity and this vision, you can align yourself with a role that you can give your best to, create success there, but that is also helping you move in the direction that you want to move. And you wouldn't have any of that clarity had you not given yourself that time to think and just to be.
I love that metaphor so much. I might even steal it. That's so good. It's such a great visual. And to every amazing thing you just said, I want to also add that when the snow globe is put down and the snow is settling, you also get to see, how did I get here? Because underneath the life that you're living that doesn't feel so good, it's not just about your employer. It's not just about your job. There's some part of you that maybe overworks. Maybe you have a problem with boundaries. Maybe you're a people pleaser. Maybe you're just a high achiever and it feels like at all expense and all cost, I haven't really valued my time or my wellness over the achievement and the like crossing it off the list and making people feel proud and happy and like crushing my goals. But it's a great chance to see like, how did I get here? And for most of my clients, I would say like 99% of them, there's some element of overdoing that was very present in their lives. And so it's not just as simple as finding a different job. It's creating a new relationship to rest, creating a new relationship to productivity, right? So that they can allow themselves to exist in a world where they're not overworking and burnt out or heading right back on that path as soon as they go back into the job market.
Yeah. No, it's a great point. And I had before my break, I actually had a series with a friend of mine. Her name's Julia Lee. And we had a series on the podcast where she was about to leave Google and she was going to try to transition into the sustainability field. But she knew that she needed a break and she knew that she needed to cultivate the skill of rest. And I was like, wait a second, that's a skill? And we were talking about it. And ultimately, when I decided finally to give myself permission and to ask for what I needed to take a break in 2022, I had her interview me about my intention for the break. And one of my intentions or themes, as you described it in your blueprint, was to rest. It was rest, play, and connect. And that's literally all I was going to do. I set aside the podcast. It didn't do anything but rest, play, and connect. And it was wonderful and it was difficult. And so I definitely recommend people go back and listen to that series with Julia Lee and also with my series about the sabbatical, because I also did a before, during, and after, both with her for her journey and for me and my journey, interviewed by her and a good friend of mine. It was interesting to see how challenging it was for me to rest.
Yeah, that's so normal. I see that over and over again. It's odd to see someone who doesn't struggle with that, right? So it's definitely a skill we need to cultivate.
Yeah, I agree. So let's get super practical, Katrina. Somebody's thinking about, I want to take a career break, right? Let's have you walk them through, where do they start? How do they make it happen? Let's go from there.
Yeah. Well, everyone's going to come into the break from a different starting point, financially, career-wise, age-wise, responsibilities. Do you have kids? Do you have family? So the things I'm going to share are foundational for pretty much anyone. So I'll try to keep them basic and very applicable. The first one is, especially being oriented towards being smart with your money, it's helpful to have this estimate. You want to know an estimated cost of a break. Because the thing is, a lot of times in our mind, it becomes wildly expensive if we don't actually go through the steps of putting a round number to what this could cost. So sometimes you actually can afford a break or you could save for a break, but it feels much further away than it really is because you're like, oh God, it's just going to cost a lot of money. I feel overwhelmed even thinking about it. I'll think about that next month. I'll think about that next year, right? Challenge yourself to just a round number, put it together. If you don't already have enough money that you want to allocate to the break, it will give you a very clear understanding of how much money you need to save or create to be able to take that break, which is much more motivating when it comes to saving and creating money, but it's really helpful. On the opposite side, that's very practical, right? On the opposite side, you want to think about the mindset piece. So we want to have a purpose statement. Like I mentioned before, you're probably not thinking too deeply or too extensively about what is at risk if you don't take a break because you don't even fully understand it. You're like, I don't know. This is what I know. So think about a purpose statement. Think about essentially, why would I take this break? What is this break about? It's usually something very deep, very meaningful, and very high stakes. So it's something like, my path in life has diverged. I feel in my spirit I am on the wrong path, but I don't know what the right path is. And this break is my chance to find a better path so that I can be happy and work towards more fulfillment and more peace for the rest of my life, right? That's high stakes. So you want to think about that purpose statement and uncover your purpose statement so you really understand what's at stake if you didn't take a break. Those are like two very basic steps. The third step is, and this one, again, very general, but you want to think about 3 to 4 themes that would describe the focus areas of your break. So in my book, Taking a Career Break for Dummies, I talk extensively about how to journal I give you some prompts to journal and answer your purpose statement questions and then themes questions. So this is very doable. But these anchor points will help you start to create a vision of what you're going to be doing on this time. Your purpose statement is success, right? This is what you're basically trying to achieve through your break. These themes are how you're going to achieve it. So if you predefine what success is, you've really zoomed forward in your likelihood to achieve success, to have a successful break, to have the kind of break you don't regret, that you actually look back on and say, that changed my life for the better, right? So themes, purpose statement, having an estimate, these are very basic things that will suddenly give you a new perspective on how feasible, close in or far away your break could be, and really understand what it's about, which also helps you explain it to other people and start telling other people, I'm thinking of taking a break, or hey, I would really like to take a break and here's why, right?
Got it. Yeah, very practical and doable, right? For people to actually start with that purpose, get clear on the themes, and then cultivate the mindsets that will empower them to make the break the best thing that can be for them. Okay, so what would be the next phase?
Yeah. So once you have the foundational part of your blueprint, the only other big piece that you want to think about, but you don't have to think about this until you get more towards the spirit of yes, I'm taking a break, is your reentry period. So you want to make sure you're thinking about, do I have time and money included, in my timeline for that? So that's a really integral piece to you having a successful experience. But once you have your blueprint, you're going to be thinking about things like giving your notice. Again, heavy on the themes and purpose statement, lean on those. What I like to tell people is give more notice than you probably feel comfortable giving. My clients average between 1 and 2 months. I gave 8 months notice for my first break. I gave 4 months notice for my second. Obviously, I'm a little bit on the extreme, but you want to think about aligning your words and your actions. So if you're telling your manager, I really care about this team, I don't want to leave you in a bad place, it's time for me to go fulfill some really big dreams, or it's time for me to really put my own well-being first. If you're giving them enough time to plan for a transition, that is aligning your words and your actions. That is creating an advocate in your manager and in your team to be like, wow, Adam left, but he really let us know that he was leaving. He gave us notice so we could work towards some kind of transition. We really appreciate that he thought of us as he was phasing out. So you want to think about that. When it comes to what do you say, there's a version of your purpose statement and themes that you can share. And I always tell people, when it comes to sharing your news with anyone, but especially when you're giving notice, think about what you're moving towards versus what you're moving away from. This is especially true in the career sense, right? With people that you're professionally connected to, you want to lean heavy on what you're trying to create. So if you're burnt out, it's totally fair to say, I feel completely depleted. I might be depressed. I am really struggling. That's fair. You could tell that to the people that care about you. But in a setting where you're giving your notice, you want to focus on what you're moving towards. So instead of that, you would maybe want to say something like, I've just really come to understand I am not performing at my highest level. I know I'm capable of so much more. To be really frank with you, I am feeling burnt out and I am so ready to restore. I want to pour back into myself. I want to take some time off. I really want to take this big fresh breath so I can come back re-energized and show up at the level that I know I'm capable of, right? So painting the picture of what you're moving towards. So that's really helpful. And then also in this phase, you want to start to think about what are some of the activities that will help you fulfill those themes, right? So if you have a theme around connection, do you want to take trips with your family? Do you want to go visit some of your loved ones? I actually had connection as one of my themes, and I took a 3-month road trip through the US, visiting a lot of my friends along the way that I hadn't seen in years because I never had enough PTO or time off to go visit them. So you want to think about what are some activities, big and small, that will help me feel this sense of connection. Maybe part of your connection is reconnecting to yourself. Some of my clients have taken pottery classes or done retreats and things to just cultivate interest or revisit things that used to make them feel alive so they can rediscover those passions and interests and see where they've changed. So I think those are probably a great place to focus in this sort of phase 2 area. You'll also want to continually immerse yourself in possibility. This is a really helpful tool. Normalize your break. If you think you want to take a break and you're excited about it, but every other person that you've ever talked to has never done it, you will absolutely have massive moments of self-doubt. If you can start to be in communities, listening to podcasts where people are sharing stories of other people who did it, it's like a seed gets planted every time you have this new example of somebody did it and they didn't die. Somebody did it and it didn't blow up their whole life. I can do this too. And it starts to make it more real and more accessible to you, which is really important in the longevity of making it across the finish line.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I talk a lot about planting seeds when it comes to envisioning the life that you want. And absolutely, seeing other people do it, seeing that it's possible are amazing seeds to plant. And the more you see it done and the more you start to take actions in alignment with that, the more you're giving yourself, you're planting and watering your own seeds of that vision and making it more and more realistic. I'm curious, like, are a lot of the people that you work with, are they leaving a job or taking a break from a job, like unpaid leave and going back to the same company or job?
About 80% of my clients are quitting their job. So 80% are taking a true career break, and about 20% are taking more of what we think of as a sabbatical, where it's employer provided leave, whether it's paid, semi-paid, or unpaid. The majority of people are making the leap. And I think it's a bias set, right? Like the people that want to hire a coach and do work and really unpack some things. And it's much more understandable somebody want to do that if you're leaving your old life behind. That's a much scarier proposition. And so I think the stakes feel a lot higher. So you're really willing and desiring that support in that journey so that you don't feel like you regret it or that you've made a mistake at the end of that. But yeah, about 80% of my clients are taking breaks. The risk is much higher, but the reward similarly is also much higher. I think at the end of a break, you have every option available to you. You can plant seeds to start your own business at some point during your break. I've had clients who wrote books. I've had clients who became contractors and freelancers. I've had clients who have gone back into an industry that was in their passion around sustainability and like saving the environment. And I've had clients who've just been promoted further along on a path that they were already on. But everything is available. You can leave your company. You can pivot a little bit. You can pivot a lot. You can create a new work lifestyle, a new work-life balance. If that calls to you, I do think acknowledging the risk is higher, but also with that comes a higher opportunity for reward. And as far as like the level of change you can create in your life once your break is over.
That's interesting to hear that it's 80% people leaving their jobs and kind of taking that break and then coming back to something new, potentially, in most cases. So let's talk about like while you're on the break, right? You've done the preparation, you got the purpose statement, you got the themes. How do you help people while they're actually like on the break?
So many good things. I love to help people wherever they are struggling. So I can tell you the places that I show up the most often. One, we've already talked about it. People giving themselves permission to rest. So I'm going to tell you, I'm going to spoil it for you guys. This is what's going to happen. You're going to start a break. You're going to be really tired. You're going to be so excited to not have to wake up at a certain time unless you have kids. But you're going to be so excited. You're going to feel so free. You're like, oh my God, this is going to be amazing. And probably the first few days is going to feel a little bit weird, like free. And also like, this is a little bit unfamiliar, but cool. And then 2 weeks into it, you're going to be like, I've rested a lot. Now I have to do something. I don't know what the hell is happening, but I'm getting anxious and antsy. I feel like I'm wasting my time. And now that I think about it, I'm starting to freak out about what I've done. And what am I going to do? Is someone going to hire me? I should probably go look at jobs on LinkedIn. I should probably reach out to my network to see what's happening. I wonder if it's like we just zoom past the rest part. It's like we're at 2% battery. And the second our battery gets charged to like 20%, because that's what we're used to. In fact, that's probably more than we're used to. We're like, oh, good, unplug, go use the phone, go use the battery. And it's like, no, this is not how it works. This is not how it works. But it takes someone holding their hand gently and sometimes forcefully to like remind them rest is a season. It's not a 2-week experience, right? We've got to practice these skills. Now we'll integrate other things like exploration, learning, connection, right? But rest is going to be a thing we do for at least the first 90 days. It usually takes my clients approximately 90 days. And I've checked in with other people that work in this space and they've seen something similar as well. It's about 3 months to really start to decompress from work and feel like you're actually head to toe, full body on a break. If you are really burnt out and like really have mental health stuff going on from just the level of stress you've been carrying, it can be way longer than that. But 3 months is the general ballpark for this. But people think that after 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, they just get anxious and antsy. So it's really rethinking what is valuable, right? Can I be valuable when I'm focused on how I'm being versus always feeling like I have to be doing to create value? Right? And that's like a whole mindset shift. And it sounds very simple, but it's actually hard to apply. So a lot of it is that. The other piece is some people just go into a spiral of freestyle where they're like, I don't really know how to create structure because I've had so much structure my whole life through school and then through my education and then the career stuff. And it's just like, I need structure. And so I like to meet them where they are. That means having a morning routine, but keeping it really light, keeping it fun, making it accessible. But I find people on a break that, especially the ones that like structure, tend to do well with the morning routine because it gives you a really quick win when your day has started. So even if the only other thing you did that day was go to the grocery store or take a walk around the lake in the sunshine and listen to a podcast, you're already starting with that sense of accomplishment, and it creates a sense of structure for your day, even though there's a lot of freedom in the rest of your day beyond the morning routine. So that's one. And then I have some guidelines in the book as far as like how to develop a morning routine, how to avoid the pitfalls I see people fall into with morning routines so they sabotage themselves. But also you want to be asking yourself some reflective questions. And again, these are in the book as well, but you want to be checking in. So you don't have to do it every week. You could do it every other week. You could do it every month. But you want to be reflecting on what really well, what didn't go well, what would I like to change going forward, and what do I want to celebrate? What am I really proud of? These simple questions can be so powerful to help you like digest the experience as you're moving along so that you're able to keep that level of self-awareness up and pivot your break as needed and also be thinking about what's coming down the road, right? The last thing I'll say, and there's so many things I could say about this, but the last thing I'll say is the reentry period is really helpful as well, because one of the things I see people struggle with is that fear of what's going to happen after the break. The reentry period is that time you get to freak out, lose your mind, have all the stress about what you're going to do next. So knowing that you have time and money set aside proactively means that when that voice, that gremlin voice shows up on your break, and it tries to hijack your fun. It tries to put you back on LinkedIn. It tries to set you up for all these like recruiters that have been contacting you. You can have a moment and say, okay, like I have a whole period of my break set aside to worry about this, to take action against this. Like this part is for enjoying. This part is for connection. This part is for learning. This part is for dreaming, whatever your thing is, right? Whatever your themes are. And so it gives you the space to really enjoy your break and be present without that low grade anxiousness, fear, and concern about what's going to happen at the end of my break.
I love that. I think that is so valuable because you set aside that time and you know that it's set aside. You can then just catch yourself when you're caught up in the stuff that belongs in that time and say, hey, there's a time for that. Now is the time to enjoy that. I've done all this work to get to this point, create this space for myself. Let me enjoy it. Because, yeah, I totally resonate with what you're saying about like, I've had enough rest. I'm good. And like,
No.
Now it's time to be productive. And like this last break that I took, which was mental health leave, and it was a very needed mental health leave. It was my inclination at first was just dive in and go, go, go. Like time to make this stuff, time to make the business happen, time to make the podcast a thing. You know, the last time I had set that all aside because I like intentionally wanted to create space and to rest, play, and connect. This time, I just needed to get out of the situation that I was in, and just essentially, I just replaced my toxic boss with myself, right? And I was just miserable, and it took me like 4 days of doing this to be like, this is not it. Like,
yeah.
And it wasn't until I was about to go back a few weeks ago that I was really into this more intuitive groove where I was like, I was doing work and I was resting and I was playing with my kids and I was in a nice balance where I was appreciating the progress I was making. I was away from the gap of never feeling like I was doing enough. And it was really nice. That said, things really escalated when I got back to work. So that feels like a million years ago. But it, was that full 3 months where it was like, and I was still figuring it out, right? So I could totally see it taking 3 months to disengage from the frenetic culture that we have in most of our companies and jobs.
Absolutely. And please, please, like this is a great moment for me to underscore. If you're really on a break, please give yourself a detox from all things job search, from being connected on LinkedIn, from feeling like you have to network and keep up to date with your like peers that you're friends with that are like coworkers or colleagues from the past. Like I see this happen so often. Your fears about what will happen, your fears about how people will perceive you, both professionally, but also like in your career search, like it's just a bad scene. You need a real break from it. You can totally reconnect, but please disconnect from that because even if you're doing the work, it's going to make it so much harder and it's going to really ramp you up towards that place of like sabotaging your whole break and really just like you can't fully be present on your break if a part of you is still connected to being at work. So please disconnect fully.
Absolutely. Because then you're watering the seeds of that old life, right?
Yeah. Oh,
And that
so good.
old
Yeah.
stuff, right? So like you need to
Mhm.
let that be and start cultivating the seeds that you want, right? With rest, connection,
Yeah.
self-awareness, vision, all those things that you can't do if you're still spending your mental and physical energy on the old stuff that you've intentionally taken a break from. Okay, I know we're coming up on time here, so is there anything you'd like to add before we get into the final four about taking a break or coming back from a break?
I think when it comes to a break, the only thing I really want to stress is please don't see this action as selfish. I've had that come up in several of my recent sessions over and over again, this word of the words irresponsible and selfish. I want you to frame this whole experience as you being very responsible for your one precious life. This is not easy. This is not certain, right? But if it's what you need, this is an investment in your well being. It's an investment in your future happiness. It is an investment in your fulfillment and just enjoying this experience and celebrating all the sacrifices you have already made to have all of the things that you currently have. So please don't think that this is selfish. Selfishness is a disregard for other people and their needs and their like desires. This is about you prioritizing yourself, prioritizing your well being. And I think it is actually the most responsible thing. Somebody that has it all, refuses to take advantage of it, to stop and enjoy it, and then grinds it out until they're like 80 and they're like crying about how they wish their life was different and really they had the power to change it. Like that's irresponsible. So please don't think of it in that way. This is you really being proactive with your life. And kudos to you if you are considering a break and or about to take a break.
Well said. So let's switch gears now into what I call the mindful fire final four. You ready, Katrina?
I'm ready.
All right. So the first question is about envisioning. You've been building this business for, I think you said about 7 years or so. I'm
Mhm.
curious, what's your big vision for the future of your life and your work?
Yeah. I'm so excited to be at the threshold in this moment where I feel like breaks are gaining an insane amount of momentum. I think it really hit like it really started to catch on like fire after the initial wave of the pandemic with the great resignation, but it's just continued to build. And I am so excited that I have this book. And I mean, truly, I talk a lot about the book, but like 9 months, 500 hours, all of my spirit going into this For Dummies book. And I'm so glad I wrote a manual for how people can do it. So my bigger vision is that this book becomes even more of a bestseller than it already is, that it reaches more people, and that it becomes one of the many tools that people use to rethink how they're approaching work and life and integrating the two. The pace that we are all running at and living at is not sustainable. Breaks are going to need to be an integrated part of how we are living and moving through our lives, given the context of everything we have going on. So I'm very excited to be a part of that conversation, to be a part of this movement. And I share and hold this bigger vision that that book will become just standard protocol, right? One of the several things people turn to when they're like, okay, it's time for me to take a break. More breaks for all of us. So that is absolutely something I hold very dear to myself. And I'm just really excited to see where it goes.
Love that. Is there a cadence in which you see like it's good to take a break?
That's such a great question. So that's really personal. And it also depends on what kind of break you're going to take. I can tell you that I've taken 2 breaks. My breaks were about 3.5 years apart. They were both fantastic, very different breaks. One was very planned. One was a little bit more swinging by the, like by the seat of my pants. But with my clients, I find that when they come back from a break, they are scoping taking their next break within 5 years. Now, I realize that might not be financially possible for all of us, but the point is, if we are proactively thinking of breaks just being an integral part of the journey, we won't need maybe a year off, right? Unless we can afford it. But if we're proactively including breaks, maybe we're great with 2 months every 2 to 3 years, and that fills our cup. Or maybe it's like a big break once every 10 years, and then we take little breaks in between that. But I would say take your first break, see how you feel. Chances are you're going to be like the majority of my clients, and you're going to feel like, that was amazing. I'm going to find a way to do that again. And so I say, whenever you can afford it, whenever you feel ready, it's a great time to take a break.
All right. The next question is, what piece of advice would you give to someone early on their path to financial independence?
If I can make it really practical, well, I have two, but they're very practical. One is track everything you spend. That was life-changing for me. I think one of the 4 biggest steps I took to even understand what choices I was making, right? Because you always want to be aligning the way that you're spending your money with what your values are. But so often, like what we're actually spending money on and what we say we value is not aligned. And that was true for me. And so just tracking what I spent for 2 months opened my eyes so that it was as simple in some cases as just saying, oh, that doesn't feel good. That's not aligned. I'm just going to change that. It was that simple. And I started saving a lot of money towards my break that way. So just knowing that information is so pivotal. Like, where is it really going? Not where do I think it goes, but where does it really go? And then in regards to saving my $40,000 in 18 months, the other really big helpful thing on my road to financial independence is having a fund to enjoy your life now. Having a line item in your budget that is about enjoying and experiencing life is so valuable. So for me, this was essential to me not feeling like I was living in deprivation and just completely miserable. I had something I called the exploration fund, and every month I put aside $200 that I had to spend on finding really creative ways to enjoy my life and feel like I was going on an adventure or exploring new ideas, new hobbies. And it really helped me find this balance between making tough decisions and prioritizing so that I was saving a lot of money, paying off my debt, saving for this break, doing all the things, but also feeling like I like my life now. I'm not just waiting for this, mythical future moment when I'm going to feel good about all the hard work I'm doing. I'm making sure that I'm showing up to enjoy the life I have today while also planning for my future and working towards my own financial independence.
That's huge. I think both of those things are really critical. Knowing where your money's going, is it aligning with what you say you value? And then also making space for fun and enjoying the journey. Really great advice. The third question is, what piece of advice would you give to someone getting started with meditation and or mindfulness?
For meditation specifically, I can say, because this is me, I've struggled on this bus. I can do it now and I tend to enjoy it. I don't do it consistently, but what really shifted for me was making it accessible. So for me, I am a high achiever. I want to crush everything. If you tell me 20 minutes is the most perfect amount of time or 1 hour to meditate, my brain says, I have to meditate for an hour. And I'm not going to meditate for an hour. So then I just never meditate at all. And what really shifted for me was making it accessible. Today is 5 minutes because that's all I can promise myself I will do, but I can do 5 minutes, right? Or maybe it's 3. And so for me, it was starting in very small increments instead of trying to do it perfectly or get it right. It's about just the practice of showing up and then letting what happens happens. And sometimes those 5 minutes turned into 20, and sometimes it was just 5 minutes. But that was a really big moment for me to step through the threshold and to kind of lower the stakes where I don't have to do it the way that the perfect, meditation student would do it. It was just how do I make this accessible so I can get started and just show up for my journey? So that was really helpful. And then on just sort of a practical level, I really love the loving kindness meditation. And a lot of my clients who struggle getting started with meditation and have a lot of thoughts and they just don't like to do unguided, that loving kindness, may I be safe, may I be happy, may I be healthy, may I live with ease, and then doing it for others in the world after you've done it several rounds for yourself can be a very peaceful, easy meditation to start that just takes a few minutes. So practically, that was very helpful to me getting started. And I've seen it work with my clients too.
Awesome. Yeah, great advice. I always, whenever I teach meditation to people, it's more about consistency of doing it rather than doing it for a long time. So It's
Yeah.
not, it's just like the gym, right? You're not going to go to the gym once for
Yeah.
even a whole day and then be good for life. No, you got to do it consistently. So what is that lowest amount that you will do no matter what and is super easy? And then also, if you fall off the wagon and you miss a week or 2 weeks or a year, you can always just start again. You can always start again with a 1 minute, 2 minute, 3 minute,
Yeah.
and build from there as you see the benefits and enjoy it. And the last question, Katrina, is how can people connect with you online, learn more about your coaching programs and everything that you have going on?
I have a free download for your audience, and it's born from one of the questions I get asked the most. What would a break actually look like? So I went through and I compiled a list of 45 of the coolest things I have seen on a break. Some have kids, some don't, some travel the world, some stayed at home. But I just tried to make this very sort of comprehensive, no matter where you are in life, list of really amazing things I've seen my clients do while on a break. But I would encourage you to check that out. And if you are in the planning stage or the preparing stage or deciding stage, and you really like to have things laid out point by point, check out Taking a Career Break for Dummies. You can find it in Barnes & Noble. You can find it on Amazon, but it's truly a handbook and a guidebook for someone that is like feeling very uncertain about this endeavor, but really knows that they are interested in taking a break.
Awesome. And where can people find that free download with the 45 ideas for career break?
Yeah, you can find it on my website, which is KMcGhee, KMCGHEE coaching.com/45 things.
Okay, very cool. I'd just like to say thank you so much, Katrina, for being here, for sharing your wisdom with the audience. I've learned so much, and I'm sure the audience is as well. And I hope they'll reach out to you to learn more from you on how they can do this in their own life.
Thank you so much for having me, Adam. And I'm stealing that snow globe. So that's a thing. I'm using that now. So thank you for that.
Go for it. I didn't come up with it myself, so feel free to take it and run with it. I think it's a nice way to explain things. And yeah, thinking about a break is a bigger version of that. Our lives are the bigger snow globe, right? So I think that is very apt. Well, thank you again for being here. Thanks for joining me on today's episode of the Mindful Fire podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, I invite you to hit subscribe wherever you're listening to this. This just lets the platforms know you're getting value from the episodes and you want to be here when I release additional content. If you're ready to start your Mindful Fire journey, go to mindfulfire.org/start and download my free envisioning guide. In just 10 minutes, this guide will help you craft a clear and inspiring vision for your life. Again, you can download it for free at mindfulfire.org/start. Thanks again, and I'll catch you next time on the Mindful Fire podcast.